Thank you for tuning in to the next installment of Coffee and Something Stronger. This is an interview show where we talk with faith leaders, people who are in the world of sustainability, environmental justice, academics, and we talk at the intersection of faith, climate change, environmental justice, and the social issues of our time. My name is Cody Norrid. I'm the Director of Programs and Policy at Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, and I am incredibly excited this morning to be interviewing the Reverend Dallas Conyers of South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light. This morning, she is the program coordinator there and has a lot of exciting work going on. Dallas, thank you for being here this morning.
Cody, thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm making it. Well, first, before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to be doing this faith-based environmental work?
Whew, so
Briefly.
I know, right? Super long story short. You've actually heard this story when we first met, Cody. But I got into this because I needed it. This was my path to health. I got into a small car accident. I was rear-ended, but it activated 3 different genetic diseases in me that were working at the same time. There were a period of years where I couldn't walk. It took until about 2018 where I was able to walk without aid of a cane and sometimes wheelchairs again. So it took almost 10 years for me to get where I am. In that process, doctors were telling me that they need to cut out a piece of my brain and a piece of my skull. And but I would really never get better. It's just that the surgery would help me not get worse. I wasn't doing that, right? So especially with like, you're not going to get better, right? Yeah, no. So I went on a health kick. Like I was just doing research and it culminated into me becoming vegan. And realizing that my environment, my immediate environment has such a huge impact on my ability to function with my brain clarity, with me being able to process information again and read again and understand traffic lights again. And yeah, it was scary. And it just turned out that air quality, water quality, food quality, everything had a direct and immediate effect on my physical body. And then it became, as I grew as a minister and I realized how many people were needlessly suffering, that I understood that whole process was me learning what my ministry was, to help people understand that it was needless suffering that they're going through.
Yeah, thank you. And you've been at South Carolina IPL for how long?
I guess about almost 6 months now.
It's coming up. The time is going, and it's, I'm sure, a strange time to be immersing yourself in this work.
Oh my God, you have no idea.
I think you have a reading to ground us this morning, so I invite you to do that.
Yeah, so.
And by reading, I mean an original poem.
I know, right? So go easy on me. Lie to me if you will. So it doesn't even have a title yet, but it'll start. What if the ocean was a child of the universe, sent here to learn self-control, to learn to approach and retreat without destruction, to calmly accept the bodies of those so different from her in her own space, to learn to let her power bring joy instead of fear, to learn to be soothing in her vastness and incomprehensible beauty? What if oceans were a child of the universe, but instead of learning self-control and shared space, she learned our destruction of whatever space we moved into? What if we filled her with so much garbage and poison, she is unrecognizable and unacceptable and too heavy to ascend to be the mist between the stars? What if we have destroyed the purpose of the oceans? What if that little Black girl in the hood was the real John Stark of tomorrow? She was supposed to create safe cold fusion, but instead we hooked her on food dyes that stripped nerve cells, filled her water glass with heavy metals and manufacturer's backwash, coated her skin with hormone-disrupting chemicals every time she wanted to smell pretty, and told her nature was a scary place she needed to avoid. What if her brain never finished developing because she couldn't rest, because she never felt safe? She regularly watched the cops kick, punch, or slam people in her neighborhood into walls and against cars for no reason that she could ever see. What if her brain never finished developing because she never could draw a full breath of air with the asthma and the heavy air that she couldn't breathe? What if our next John Stark never finished high school because her heart broke from despair before she could design a new one? What if justice were a baby boy, learning what we want from what we give it, nourished by what we fed him? But instead of holding him close to our hearts, we were too busy coddling fear and cynicism like twins, letting them suckle till nothing flowed for justice but empty ideals and an acceptance of mistreatment lived in the vessel where courage was supposed to grow. What if we are growing our reality through our actions and we could change everything that was wrong with our lives with belief and action shaped into strategy? A few election cycles, a lot of changes to what we buy and where we go, shaping through movement. What if all people could really live good lives because the world was created with enough resources? It just takes compassion and wisdom to manage it. If only there was a God who said that this was so. Thank you.
Thank you so much for writing that and for bringing it this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Say a little bit about what it means for you, this piece, and why you wrote it.
I was trying to convey that we have a direct impact on everything we do. And in my faith tradition, everything was created with a purpose, not just humans. And because of that purpose, and because our Creator is so much more than us, just more than us, and has a deeper understanding of the functions of the world, I cannot sit here and discount the possibility that my actions are either helping or impeding the growth and the functionality that they are supposed to serve as well. And my disinterest and my interest affects the oceans, affects the air we breathe, affects little children that I'll never meet, affects older people. It's just, we're all connected, but we all have value, and we should respect that value by being the best we can be.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned in your faith tradition, and so why don't you tell us a little bit about what that tradition is and how that tradition helps you kind of be informed about how you work on environmental issues and climate issues? How do those things two connect for you?
Okay, so I'm cracking up because I'm Christian, right?
Right.
But and I am in a Baptist church. I love my church, but I don't believe in denominations, right? It's like totally against the Bible. So that said, I'll move on to the other part of the question.
But you're rooted in a Baptist community now. Is that correct?
Okay. Yes, Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church under the leadership of Pastor M. Keith McDaniel. Holla. So I'm in the Baptist community now, and I love it. I love the tenets of baptism. I'm nothing against Baptist, the Baptist tradition. It makes me say no. So it informs my environmental work because the Baptist tradition is very much so steeped in self-responsibility. And if you hear me talk for more than 10 minutes, you'll understand that the words intentionality and responsibility come out of my mouth a lot. If you just do things trying to be a good person, you can create a lot of chaos and trouble. But if you do things intentionally and thinking about impact and resources, you can do a lot of good even with a little. So if we tie our consciousness and intentionality into the environment, I believe that we can all do a little bit of work with huge impacts and directly just like bless God's creation because he values it as well.
Yeah, are there tenets of your Baptistness or your faith lineage that you point back to and you think, yeah, that's a sermon, or that's a theological idea, or that's a text that grounds me in this environmental work?
Yeah, so not too long ago, I had to come out with Jesus was a freedom fighter, right? I serve, one of my positions is the Director of Health and Wellness for the Spartanburg County Baptist Association. And in that speech, I had to let people know that this is what Jesus did. Jesus fought for people who were under social oppression, and he went from town to town and place to place, telling people about their rights and that they are loved and that they have a responsibility to this world and they have a responsibility to God's creation. And he rebuked those who were hypocrites. And he rebuked those who said one thing and tried to act like they were better than other people. So, for me, it's all about the work that Jesus did. And I can't think of a better person to say, hey, this is who you should be acting like, So go out there and do what you need to do to take care of this world. Because Jesus said, you will have the same power I have, and more so. So do this work for God's creation. Like, I can't say anymore because it's just that simple.
Yeah.
Do the work.
Yeah, the whole ministry sort of orients around what does it mean to tell truth in the face of an unjust empire. And that includes extractive industries, these sort of polluting industries that come into communities, the kind of decision makers that push pipelines through communities or strip resources out of communities. The whole thing definitely very applicable. So I like your framing of Jesus as a freedom fighter because it seems pretty true.
Yeah. Thank you for making it so much better. Definitely gonna use it.
No. So part of your work at South Carolina IPL is not too different from mine here in Georgia, that you try to recruit congregations, to equip them to work on environmental issues. And so I'd love to hear a bit from your perspective on why you think it's important for congregations to incorporate creation care and environmental justice into their overall ministry.
Because if they don't, who's going to care? We live in a very technologically based world now, and we're dealing with increasingly dangerous natural disasters. So people are literally like, it's not safe to be involved in nature. Let's move away from that and be in these buildings with our air conditioning and all that stuff. We need our faith traditions to lead us back outside, to lead us back directly into the energy and creation of God and move us out of our own selfish edifices that are just filled with our own energy, which is very misdirected, by the way, half the time. So if our faith traditions don't speak on the importance of all life, and I don't mean human life, I mean all life, and how we are responsible as caretakers. My faith tradition does speak on stewardship, that we aren't just supposed to be using up the resources of the world and taking up the land and destroying it for all the other creatures that live in it, but instead we have a responsibility to care for it and manage it and help grow it and help make it flourish and live in vitality. If we don't base that in our belief of our higher power, then we will do what has been done, which is move away from it, unlove it, hate it in the fact that we just have no regard for it, and just let it go to pieces under our own selfish needs. Actually, not even needs, wants.
Why do you think it's important for congregations, especially, you go through this process and people kind of get what you're saying, they're on board. Why is it important for faith leaders and congregations to be at the table with other decision makers and other community leaders that are trying to address some of these justice issues?
Because it's the same thing. If you're a person who works in political government, or you're a person who's on a school board, which is a decision maker that has a lot of weight in our society and should have more, but you're not being confronted with the moral and ethical point, not just of just like it's good as a person in society, but it's good for your very soul, in the outcome of your legacy that you leave and the impact of this world, that creation and environment are one and the same. We live in creation. Our environment is creation. Destruction and disrespect of creation of our environment is destruction and disrespect of God's creation, whoever you call God and however you see God. And if those tenets, and if your faith leader is not looking you in the face, talking about the connection between creation and environment, then you're likely to forget and let this corporation that has a lot of money come in and say, I can help your community in this immediate moment, and you forget about the impact on your soul. So we need to be in their face, reminding them of the impact on their soul.
Yeah, that's really good. You mentioned earlier when you were talking about some of the things that were going on with people and nature, and one of those things is disasters. We know that as the globe warms and that weather patterns change, that some of these disasters, especially for coastal communities, become much more rampant, much more destructive, much longer, much more common. And you all in South Carolina helped to bring together a group of people to talk about resiliency on the coast, specifically for congregations. And so I wonder if you talk a little bit about that and maybe other resiliency work that you're trying to do there.
Yeah, so thank you. So that was a hurricane preparedness workshop, and I still want us to spin that off into a larger aspect.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
We're going to do that. It's going to get done. Hurricanes are a big thing. If you pay any attention at all to the southeast coast of the United States, you know that we are getting whipped with wind and water on a yearly basis. And I mean, it is causing billions of dollars of destruction, and that number is just going to get higher and higher. But we talk about money, but we don't talk about lives. We don't talk about people losing their homes, their belongings, and never being able to reclaim it because their insurance wasn't right. And we really don't talk about churches having the same issues. Churches not being able to open back up, churches whose people have to find new congregations to worship in, and congregations that were basis of sanity and love for those people now having to find other places to go. People losing their faith in God because they go through so much destruction, but there is nobody out there to help them get back on their feet. So what we did was we talked to these congregations about insurance and the right policies they should make, so that when they go through the hurricane, they can actually move past it into a better place, not just sitting there and talking about we're going to rebuild the edifice, but how can we have enough money to rebuild the edifice and do better for our community? How can we go and actually go and do outside checks to our construction and our land right now so that the hurricanes don't affect us as badly? What measures can we put in place? And help us to understand a little bit more. We have somebody come in and talk about understanding what's happening and how these systems will be ramping up so they know what to expect and so that they can further prepare for the future. So we were looking at the future, we were looking at right now, and we were looking at what you can do to mitigate between those two. And I think that we all need to start doing that. Especially when it comes to insurance, because I think we all know at least one example of somebody who was like, but I thought I had insurance and it wasn't covered. Something wasn't covered. So yeah, so we're doing that. We did that, and I'll stop talking because you have more.
No, it's okay. All I was going to say is that this is a good plug for people who are tuned in right now, that also in a couple of weeks, we'll be having our Southeast Faith Leaders Network Virtual Faith Communities and Climate Resiliency Summit, in which we're going to have some U.S. representatives. We're going to have a couple of clergy people. We're going to have our very own good friend, Avery Davis Lamb, who is going to present with us. Avery will actually be on the show next week to be able to talk about this more. So that's a plug for next week's episode. But this issue of resiliency, so it's not only, how do we figure out clean energy solutions to prevent the continual warming and damaging of the planet. There's that we're working on. But at the same time, we have to put in these resiliency measures for people on the coast and in different communities across the nation and the world who will continue to face these impacts of climate change, even if we stopped everything today, that we have to do both of those things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really important thing for faith communities and individuals who are getting involved in the work, is you need to do the work of prevention for the people who are on the ground right now, and you're also doing the work of prevention for 100 years from now. You're kind of doing both of those things at the same time. I know you mentioned a little bit about this in your introduction. Health is obviously incredibly important to you. you're obviously the director of health and wellness. And so I wonder if you talk a little bit about how health, both your personal story and generally just you working in that field of health and wellness, intersects with your care for the environment, how those things are connected. Because I know for you, those are sort of inextricably bound together. And I wonder if you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, I get a little confused when people talk about themselves and their physical health separate from the environment. Like, I honestly don't get it because I have moderate severe asthma, right? So that's like bad, severe, and moderate severe. Um, and I went to New Delhi a couple of years ago for a couple of days, and I thought I was going to die on the street from the air quality. Like, I was cold to the touch. I was sweating profusely, and my airways were closing up. That's how bad the air was. And we enjoy really good air here, except for a couple of weekends ago, we got one of our first bad air warnings. And I was like, I'm struggling to breathe outside in the middle of a forest, which is one of the best places to be for air quality among all the trees. So when people talk about the environment and they're talking about how many kids have asthma, I can directly relate to, if you don't take care of our air, you are not only screwing yourself on some level, you are screwing your children, you are screwing your nieces, your nephews, your little cousins. Like, you are doing a direct disservice to the people. And it's not just that your lungs close up, your brain gets fuzzy first. You cannot think and process when you can't breathe. If you have bad water in your system, which unfortunately I have had as well, you feel queasy and nauseous if you're not actually like, refusing the water. And sometimes you just need to sleep. So we talk about, as Americans, how productive we love to be and how we should get up and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But you're constantly nauseous. You can't think straight. You can't form our new ideas with clarity. You can't remember words. You want to throw up all the time, and you're just tired because your body's trying to remove all these toxins. And this isn't even talking about food, right? We're just talking about air and water. How are you supposed to pull yourself up by your bootstraps when you can barely pull yourself out of bed? Mm. And how are you supposed to be a good person if you constantly feel bad? How are you supposed to love God if every day is a struggle within your own body? Like, everything ties into the environment. If you don't take care of your environment, your body is going to suffer unless you have massive amounts of money to constantly flush your air and your water and control your food. And I don't have that.
And it is worth noting the types of people who are consistently put into positions in which they cannot breathe because of a variety of systems that are linked together. And it's sort of, when you have a system that relies on pollution for general enjoyment, then you have to make some decisions about who you're going to sacrifice in that, because you're not going to sacrifice yourself. So who are you going to do that to? Who are you going to put that waste onto? And it's just another example of the ways in which we systematically devalue Black and brown bodies and lives and communities, because those are the people who, more often than not, are faced with these burdens, exactly what you're talking about: unjust food systems, toxins in the air, toxins in the water. So not only does it make it impossible, as you said, to sort of live in a way that would make someone feel healthy, but also sort of sets up a world in which it is paralyzing. What are you supposed to do when that's your everyday? And that is something that, to me, kind of loops back into why should faith communities be involved in this, because your neighbors' lives are at stake. This is systemic injustices at play, not just about one thing, but it carries over into everything, including the environment.
Yeah. And what gets me about this whole thing, at this point in time, this is a choice that we're making because it's no longer necessary for us to have all of these bad productive, like bad production. Like we don't need to be doing this for energy anymore, right? We don't need to be using fossil fuel. We can very much be waning ourselves off of fossil fuels and all of the bad outputs it has because we have the technology to harness sunlight, which is not harmfully impacting or nearly harmfully impacted as harmfully impacted. And it produces enough money as an industry to definitely train people who are in the fossil fuel industry to come over and still have good, if not better paying jobs. Like this choice that our government is making to continue to fund fossil fuel industry is literally a choice of we prefer money over people because it's
This
no
is,
longer necessary.
yeah, this is a perfect segue about preferring money over people. And I wonder, you know, a lot in this intersection of coronavirus and energy and public health and energy burden has been a conversation about shutoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And you recently, we've done some work here on shutoffs in Georgia, especially through the Just Energy Circle and with help from Partnership for Southern Equity primarily. But you recently circulated a sign-on letter for faith leaders calling again for some sort of national moratorium on shutoffs. And I wonder if you could talk about this intersection of, you know, industries and politics that care more about money than people, and why you all felt compelled to push this issue again on shutoffs and how that ties into your environmental work.
Yeah, so, ooh, that's a big one, Cody.
And maybe explain for people who are tuning in who may not know what kind of the situation is around shutoffs and what that means.
Yeah, let's talk about that first. So, COVID requires people to be able to wash their hands, wash their clothes, wash their face masks because they're using cloth face masks because they can't afford the surgical face masks because they're ridiculously expensive now. It requires you, our environment, which is heating up rapidly, requires you to be able to have things like an air conditioner. It's not safe to go to the store every day and buy food, so you need your refrigerator. And just about everybody I know is working from home. And if you're not lucky enough to be working from home, you're probably not getting paid enough to work one job. So you're constantly on the internet looking for new jobs. So water, power, and broadband are now necessities of American society, right? And people are being faced with the fact that they cannot afford these things and they're being left to on their own to supply when our economy was allowed to tank because we funded large corporations to do buybacks instead of giving money to the individual of the, you know, of the people of the country. What's happening is a lot of people are thinking that these moratoriums are still going on. No, only 5 states will have protections past July. So in a few days, most of the protections that are going on right now will be gone, right? So we're like, no, this needs to be a federal mandate. No more this patchwork thing where if you live in this county or this state, you're covered. Everybody needs access to broadband, water, and power. And guess what? These utilities have been raking in massive profit margins because they receive subsidies from our government on state and federal levels. They can afford it. Just like how our government used to say, and tell me if I'm going too political, but our government used to say, we don't have money for this, we don't have money for that. And then they pulled a couple of $1 trillion out of the bag on like the drop of a dime and gave it to a bunch of rich people. Like, we can afford this. The utility companies can afford this. People, on the other hand, cannot afford to be without water, power, and broadband. And so the No Shutoff Coalition contacted me based upon a previous letter I had done, and they said we want to partner with you because that's what this is. This is not Dallas Conyers. This is a broad partnership of many people across this country. Leading the way and speaking to our representatives and senators. I'm not exactly sure if I'm allowed to say which ones are online, but there are 4 representatives in our U.S. House of Representatives and 3 senators who are already on board. And they specifically asked yesterday in an interview that I did that you go out to your virtual town halls, you go to your city council meetings, your county council meetings, and you say, we want this moratorium on shutoffs to happen this session, not next session, not next stimulus package. This stimulus package needs to have that we will continue to have broadband, water, and power. And if you don't do this, you are not taking care of the people or representing the people of this United States in the way that you said you would do when you took the job, because it's a job.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the same. That's really important, I think. And I have a dog here. This kind of conversation about shutoffs is super important because it lifts up exactly what you're saying, is that we have money for all these kinds of things, except for people when they need it.
Yeah.
And we're actually, if you're tuning in and you're thinking about Georgia, we're in the same position. We just had the Public Service Commission several weeks ago vote on allowing those collections to begin again and setting a timetable for when shutoffs would be able to be put back in place. And so I think if you are listening to this, you should call not only your federal representatives and senators, which you should do, to voice your opinion on this, both for yourselves and for your neighbors. And you should also do the same. You should call the Georgia Public Service Commission and say the exact same thing, because that's what has to happen. We have to keep saying it over and over and over again until people listen. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Dallas, for that letter. And GIPA was happy to sign on to that and distribute it to our faith leaders. And it's really, really great work, how we can kind of keep putting the pressure everywhere that we can to try to get that relief to the people who need it.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a little bit, well, I'll tie these two in together, because you talked a little bit about productivity and how America is all about productivity. And I think that also leaks into the nonprofit sphere. It leaks into the grassroots practitioner sphere, where work, because there is so much to do. There's always tons to do. And when you don't have money, like corporations, the only thing that you have is your time and your passion and your people. And so you work on that. But I wonder if you could talk about the importance of both meditation and your own spiritual development, and the importance of rest for practitioners, and how these two are kind of linked for you, because I know they're very important. So I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about that.
Meditation, rest, and productivity, right? So those are not usually the three words that people string into the same sentence, because they think productivity means staying up as much as possible and staying like hyper-focused all the time. Right. Not hyper-focused, the opposite, multitasking all the time. I almost lost my dang mind trying to do that. Like, it just doesn't work for me. Exhaustion causes so much pain. Like, your body literally heals when you're sleeping. Like, all your cells and whatnot, all your systems like go back to balance when you're asleep. And the first thing Americans love to do is talk about how many hours of sleep they're managing to survive for. And I only got 3 hours. I only got 4 hours. It's like this competition of who can be the most insane and worse to their body and still function. Like, and then meditation is like, you sit quietly and don't think on purpose. You don't have anything to do. It's like, no, I have stuff to do. That's why I need to meditate, because if I don't bring it back to center, I'm gonna lose my freaking mind, right? And I'm saying this on a personal level. I get so anxious when I don't sit down and connect back with the universe and realize how small I am. I have a lot to do, but let's face it, if you span out time and space and millennia, my lifetime is like this. Like, it's not even that much. It doesn't even create a snap. It's not even a spark, right? It's just, yes, I'm important. I value myself, but the world won't stop without me. And if I take 15 or 20 minutes to reevaluate and be centered in myself, I actually develop a better legacy. For me, meditation is tapping back into God. It's allowing myself to stop and be still, because my faith tradition says he speaks with a still small voice. And if I'm trying to do 3 different tasks at once, there is no way that I could hear God's still small voice speaking to me. And I could pray all I want and talk to him all I want. But if I never listen, what am I doing? So meditation to me is direct guidance. And at the very least, even if you don't believe in God, meditation will give you an opportunity to hear your own heart and your own thoughts, and those thoughts that keep popping up in those silent times are really the things that are trying to speak to you and tell you yourself that this is what's important to you at this section of your life. Please pay attention to me and develop it. And so meditation is absolutely essential for living a life of purpose. 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, and the rest of your day is just like clear. It's like magic.
Yeah, I like your point about it's important to remember. I mean, this is kind of the importance of Sabbath. So Sabbath is great because you need to rest. It causes you to take some space so that you can recenter yourself, so that you can be your best self when you go back to doing your work. But also it reminds a bit about not to be too prideful. Like the work doesn't depend on all me, because in a way that can leak over into pride, and it becomes, well, if I don't do it, then it can't get done. And so how to balance that with a calling that draws you into the work, because this is what you should be doing, but that also you're not the only laborer in the work. And if you continue to do the work in a way that hurts and damages yourself, then you're not really doing the work that you need to be doing.
That's it. Helpful. Yeah. And activists are some of the most burnt out folk I know. Yeah. And I think we need to change that, because we're trying to create joy for the world. And I think we need to remember to live in joy ourselves, so we can just share it instead of create it.
Yeah. Well, I've got one more question, and it's the same question that I ended every interview with, which is, what are you missing the most in a COVID-19 world? And what gives you hope? What sustains you?
So I am missing hugs. I need hugs. I used to go to church just to get hugs sometimes. Oops, I should have said that as a minister, should I? But, yeah, I'm missing contact, personal contact. I miss talking to people, laughing with people, like face to face, and like feeling their energy bounce off of me, like the echoes of their laughter. I miss going to the park and randomly like getting involved in like other people's sporting events, or going to the beach and finding people playing beach volleyball and playing terribly with them. Just that sense of random connection and just meeting and loving people, I miss. And my hope is that we're taking time out to not only appreciate some of the beauty of stillness and isolation, and learning to meditate, and learning to be more conscious of what we're eating, and learning that, outside is good. But also that we take all of that and remember it when we go back with people, so that this is just a growth experience.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, everyone, you can find us here, same time, same place next week. I'm going to be interviewing Avery Lamb with Creation Justice Ministry to talk about coastal resiliency and some of the work that he has been doing. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different to close out. I'm actually not going to offer a reading. Instead, I'm going to ask that Dallas lead us in a brief meditation, and then we will close out from there.
I know I agreed to this meditative thing, but I'm like totally like zipping with energy right now. Okay, so I want everybody to just practice this whole groundedness and awareness of where they are. So I don't care where you are, I don't care what you're doing. I just want you to drop everything out of your hands, right? Take everything out of your hands and place your hands somewhere where they can rest comfortably. So if you're walking, stand still. Place your hands on your thighs or on your armrests if you're in a chair. Take a deep breath in And if you feel safe, exhale and close your eyes as you exhale. Breathe in again. And exhale. And I want you to become aware of whatever source of light is on your skin right now, whether it be the sunlight or a regular light bulb somewhere in your home or office. Take a deep breath in and feel that light spreading across your skin. Exhale and release the light to spread throughout your body, letting the light go in where the air was. Inhale in, breathing in that light. Exhale out, and now feeling the flow of air throughout your body as you release it. Breathing in, feeling the light touch your throat, your chest, your belly. Exhale, feeling the air leave your throat, your chest, your belly. If you feel safe, and if you have the ability to do so, inhale and lift your arms out to the side, whichever way feels good. In a gentle sway from side to side, bringing the palms alternately forward and back. Just a light sway, nothing vigorous, just a little movement throughout the waist. Breathing in as you twist, breathing out as you come to center. Breathing out as you twist and breathing in as you come to center. Letting that air flow through you and with your movement. Feeling the air travel past your fingertips. Feeling your face twist and turn across the light source. Playing with the energy of the light, the movement of the air, the movement of your body, and recognizing that they are always in contact with one another. Breathe in. Let your arms relax. Breathe out. Nice, slow, and continuous. Breathe in. Feeling air and light. Breathe out. And on this last inhalation, I want you to breathe in and fill that light with air and place it around your heart. Breathing into your heart, filling your heart with light and air and presence of your own energy. And exhale, allowing your own presence to fill yourself and the space around you and inform the air around you and connect with the universe. Open your eyes. Thanks, Cody.
Thank you so much, Dallas, for coming and talking with us this morning. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.